Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we are diving into a really detailed policy framework, one that basically imagines what it would be like to rebuild a country from the ground up. It's built on a set of principles that, well, they really challenge a lot of how things are done today.
And this whole blueprint, it really just boils down to these three words. Pragmatic, meaning decisions are based on what works, like an engineering problem, not on ideology. Sovereign, which is all about national self-reliance. And meritocracy, where you get ahead based on your ability, period. Okay, let's get into what this actually looks like.
So yeah, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? What happens when you take these ideas and turn them into an actual plan? This document tries to answer that. It's like a full architectural blueprint for a nation, and we're going to walk through it, starting with the very machinery of its government. Right, so the first part of the plan tackles the most fundamental stuff. It's proposing a complete rewiring of how the state itself is even structured and how it operates. And boom, right out of the gate, you see the first radical move. The idea here is to just slash all the bureaucracy and overlap by getting rid of state and local governments completely. So you go from that three-tiered system down to just two: a federal government and these larger, consolidated regional authorities.
To really encourage long-term thinking, for big projects and stable planning, federal elections would be moved from the current cycle to fixed 5-year terms.
The plan also takes aim at preventing an entrenched bureaucracy, what some people might call a deep state. It does this by limiting the senior heads of government departments to just a single 5-year term. The thinking is, this keeps the public service directly accountable to the government you actually elected. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this hardline stance on money and politics. It's not just trying to limit influence, it's proposing an outright ban on everything, lobbying, all political donations, and then shifting to a publicly funded election model. The goal, in its own words, is to remove the corruption of money from democratic politics. And get this, in another major shift, the framework completely rethinks how you form a cabinet. Instead of ministers being chosen from elected politicians who represent a local area, a prime minister would run with a pre-selected expert cabinet full of professionals. So you're prioritizing deep, real-world experience in a field over a career in politics. Okay, let's switch gears and move to the economy, and you'll see how this whole idea of national sovereignty plays out here, especially when it comes to industrial and energy independence. The energy strategy is a perfect example of that pragmatic principle we talked about. It basically rejects what it calls the renewables-only ideology. So first, secure the grid with what you have, coal and gas. Then make a hard pivot to nuclear power. And the endgame? To become a leader in the AI industry by literally putting zero-emission nuclear energy right next to massive data centers. So the crucial point here is this profound shift away from just being a resource exporter, a quarry for other nations, to becoming a self-reliant industrial power. That means you process your own minerals right here, you ban foreign ownership of key assets like farms and mines, and you enforce fiscal discipline with a mandatory balanced budget every single year. Now, this blueprint, it goes way beyond just government and economics. It really tries to redefine the entire relationship between the state and its people, to create a whole new social contract. On immigration, the policy focus is crystal clear: integration. It ties residency directly to speaking English fluently, to being financially self-sufficient for 10 years, and to doing a year of national service. It also proposes what it calls universal citizenship, which basically means the state serves every citizen equally without any race-specific institutions or subsidies. Education would get a radical restructure. The system is split into two very distinct tiers. You've got your traditional universities for humanities and then new technicons for STEM and trades. But here's the real kicker. Public funding is massively redirected away from the universities and poured into the technicons, all with the explicit goal of creating the workforce for that sovereign industrial base we just talked about. And in a direct rejection of a lot of current trends, the plan explicitly says that all DEI offices and mandates would be totally removed from public institutions. Admission and jobs, it says, would be based only on merit. This is a classic example of that pragmatic, almost libertarian-leaning approach. So instead of banning social harms, the idea is to regulate them and tax them heavily. This creates a direct self-funding loop, where the money from those activities pays for the very services you need to mitigate their negative effects. It's a closed circle. All right, finally, the blueprint zooms all the way in on the specific rights and, just as importantly, the duties of the individual citizen inside this whole new structure. A really core tenet of this social vision is something called parental sovereignty. This would formally recognize that parents, not schools, not the state, are the final authority in their own children's lives. It's a real cornerstone of traditional conservative thinking. The plan also tries to protect individual liberty in the digital age. It demands that all citizen data stay within the country's borders. It firewalls any government ID from your private life. And, this is critical, it explicitly prohibits a central bank digital currency. That's to prevent any possibility of the state monitoring or controlling your personal finances. But to balance all that liberty, there's a really strong emphasis on responsibility. To build up national cohesion and a sense of shared duty, a mandatory year of service, either civil or military, would be required for all young citizens, not just new immigrants. So, there you have it. This is a starkly different vision for a nation, one that many would see as a kind of traditionalist or libertarian conservative answer to today's challenges. It offers a very clear trade-off. It's a pursuit of efficiency, self-reliance, and pure meritocracy. And that really leaves us with the final, crucial question to think about. In a system like this, what might be gained and what could be lost?